Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jared Prugar, and I am joined by my co-host and good friend, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, Penn State went across the country, got a hard-fought 33-30 victory over USC. They are now the number 3 team in the country, thanks to Ohio State losing to Oregon. And Penn State is officially bowl eligible in 6-0, and they've got all of their dreams and aspirations still firmly in front of them with 6 games left to go.
Yeah, and I think the amount of dreams that I have left in my life is greatly reduced after that game because that I think I text you. It took years off my life. You spot USC, 14 points in the first half, look abysmal. Defense tried man coverage for the first time this season because Miller Moss could allegedly pick apart zone defense. And he picked apart the man defense too. So I'm not sure that was the right game plan, but Big Ten teams are now 2-9 on road games, more than 2 time zones away. Penn State has one of those wins, and Ohio State has one of those losses. So they are the number 3 team in the country now by the AP rankings. I don't know if they're actually the number 3 team in the country. I don't think I know even who number 2 team in the country is. Texas is my clear number 1, but wherever else the top 25 shakes out, I have no idea. But to come back from 14 down at halftime on the road at USC, a team who is literally fighting for their season because now they have a 3rd loss. What a win. I mean, you're fighting a team with their backs against the wall. They came out, they took the punch, and then they went back and punched it back.
Exactly. And I think that, we were talking before we came on, but I do think in the grand scheme of things, this is James Franklin's best coach game at Penn State. As far as the result, the expectations, they're the number 4 team coming into the game. All this talk about the runway and State College and coming out 3 time zones away and how he does against teams like USC, because USC, let's be real, is a much better 2-loss team than probably anybody in the country. But that's just the way that they've gone. But this team was never out of it. They had a lot of things go their way for sure, but the defense, they struggled at times early. They over pursued on the Joyner touchdown rush in the first play of the game, and Miller Moss is a stud. So I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback that they've seen all year. So I mean, he was gonna get his, but again, when it mattered the most, the defense was ready, and the defense played their tails off. They gave up only 10 points in the second half, none in overtime, for Penn State to come back down and score 24 points in the overtime, and then 3 points again there 24 points in the 3rd and 4th quarter, and then 3 points in overtime. That's the type of play that you don't always expect from Penn State when they're down. It's the first time they've been challenged really like that against a team like this other than Bowling Green. And they showed up and they showed out and got out of there with a win. And the way that college football is right now, all that matters is that they do, in fact, have a win.
Yeah, I think there's only, 11 undefeated teams left in FBS. Obviously, the top 3 are, which is Texas, Oregon, and Penn State. So winning every week is becoming more and more important. Alabama nearly drops one at home to South Carolina just to show you how hard is winning in college football. I don't remember if Tennessee pulled it out against Florida, but they were struggling mightily.
And they dropped in the polls as a result.
I mean, I think they were trailing 3-0 at halftime for Tennessee. So, it's a gritty win. Props to the offense. It was the Tyler Warren show. His 17 receptions ties the all-time FBS record for receptions in a game by a tight end. Took a snap at every conceivable position possible in the game, including that snap at center on his touchdown reception. But we really thought coming into the game that they were going to be able to run the ball down USC's throat, and they did. They couldn't. Nick Singleton averaged 2.6 yards a carry, and Katron was 3.5. Could they have done a little bit better on the run game? I think so. Seemed to be they were just forcing the ball to the board because it looks like fix it. But Drew Adler threw for career high 391 yards yesterday. Three ties. I mean, he doubles his interception total for his career, which was tough. The third one doesn't really count because it was on that Hail Mary late, but both of those, the first interception particularly, looks like Fleming or was it Clifford? Fleming and Clifford ran the same route, had Warren wide open in the flat. Like if we're spoon feeding Warren all day long, like let's keep doing it. He was wide open in the flat on that play. So Drew throws in a triple, quadruple coverage, just a bad decision. He's allowed to have it. I mean, he's allowed to have a bad decision. That was in the first half, so just entirely up. But props to the offense for that performance because you needed the offense to show up. They were sleepy. They had 72 yards on their first drive, and I believe the next three drives they had a combined 13 plays and 61 yards. They had less plays and less yards on those three drives than they did on the first.
Clearly, you want to start a little bit better. Obviously, they had the ball inside the 5 twice in the first half and couldn't punch it in. Settled for field goals, but again, they did everything that they needed to do, and they got out of there with a win. But the offense, they couldn't run the ball, not just because of what USC was giving them, but they were down. They trailed most of the game. They made Penn State came out, scored on their first drive. Then they give up the 75-yard rush by Joyner, so they're automatically down 7-3. Then another rough drive. They go seven plays, 89 yards. Joyner touchdown pass from Moss. Now they're down 14-3. Then another field goal, so they're down 17-3, and it's early in the second quarter, and you're thinking, "Oh God, here's the same old James Franklin story against a quality opponent across the country." Yada yada yada. Then a chip shot field goal, right? They probably should have scored, but it ends up being a 33-yard field goal. They come back, give up a late. I believe there is an interception by Drew right before the half. But the defense holds them to a field goal, and that right there to me was the turning point of the game. That was when your backs are against the wall. You hold them to a field goal, knowing that you're going to come back out and get the ball back. Penn State goes down, scores. Gets the ball back, scores. And then it's now that it's flipped, right? So instead of, and now it's 23-20 after their field goal, and then Penn State took over from there and in overtime. So, I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing that they did. Obviously, that late touchdown by Miller Moss puts Penn State up, or I'm sorry, USC up 33-23. And then Drew Aller has the drive of his life, 12 plays, 75 yards, ties it up. And then they obviously go into overtime. Defense handles business again. Obviously, looking at some of the plays and what wasn't called versus what was called, probably got away with a couple penalties there. But again, they were letting them play all day. So
letting them
could have gone either way.
Letting them play is generous. The officiating was awful.
Not good. Yeah, not at all.
And I mean, I scared my dog on the touchdown for USC that got called back, and I said, call the bleeping hold as the play was going on, because Jalen Reed gets absolutely tackled in the backfield, and they hadn't called a holding call all game long. USC gets a touchdown off of a clear hold, and finally the refs pull one out of their pockets. It's the officiating this year across the board, especially in the ACC. We can go there later. We don't need to go there this week, though. But the Big Ten officiating has been abysmal. In a close game like this, good officiating matters, and the referees were awful. I mean, just absolutely terrible. Touched on something you were talking about earlier. We talked all last year. This team did not play complementary football. Right. Offense would go 3 and out. Defense would force the 3 and out. Offense come back out on the field. They go 3 and out too. And it's like, guys, we need to sustain a drive. Or the defense gives up a long touchdown drive and really needs a breather. Offense goes 3 and out. Or 4 or 5 plays, and then they punt again and put a very tired defense back out on the field. Yesterday was the definition of team complementary football. Offense was doing their things. They were scoring touchdowns. They were kicking field goals. Defense was holding USC without points. Offense throws an interception. Defense holds them to a field goal both times. Like, that was a complete team win. Did both sides of the ball, were they lacking in areas? Yes, of course. I mean, they gave up how many yards? 400 some yards yesterday. Like, bad performance all around. 409 yards. Nice. Good number. 409 yards of total offense for USC yesterday. But the only thing that matters is that Penn State won.
Absolutely. And listen, Woody Marks, Quentin Joyner, they both had great games. But when it mattered the most, James Franklin had his team prepared. They made some incredible second half adjustments. USC really didn't do much in the second half, which is crazy to think given the first half that they had. But again, for Penn State, it's a great opportunity to go into a tough environment to play. But you look at kind of the way that things went in the third quarter. Penn State forced 2 punts, allowed a field goal and a touchdown, and then forced an interception there late. And then obviously missed a field goal in OT. And that late drive, I thought Lincoln Riley could have been a little bit more aggressive, go for the win in regulation, but he seemed pretty confident in going into overtime and getting to that. But again, Franklin had his team ready to go in overtime. They elected to defer, play offense second, and it worked out super well. Again, want to start the game a little bit better, obviously, but when you over pursue, and Penn State has had a penchant for over pursuits and missed tackles early in games. But again, they're able to get out of USC and LA with a win. They are 6-0, and they are the number 3 team in the country heading in to a bye week where there could be some even more action around the country.
Yeah, and what a time for the bye week. You have that long trip to USC, very emotional win, and you get to take your time coming back. I mean, obviously they flew out last night, but you don't have to rush into adjustments. You don't have to rush into getting caught up on sleep, adjusting back to the time zones, and then jumping into preparing for Wisconsin. You get to take the first couple days of the week off, rest your body up after 2 really long flights, give coaching staff time to process the film. What happened? What went wrong? What went right? How can we improve on those things? Very, very crucial time for a bye week before the next road trip again back to Wisconsin. So, yeah, perfectly timed bye week.
Yeah, it couldn't come out at a better week, a better time. Get healthy, get Nicholas Singleton healthy, ready to go going into Wisconsin, and then the matchup at home against Ohio State. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the team's play when we come back in the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the Lashing Out podcast and the Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm Jared. He's Kevin. Drew Allard played the game of his life. Nicholas Singleton played a solid game coming off an injury, but it was Tyler Warren's world, man. And he played one of the most complete games as a tight end that I've ever seen. He is having a season that I would consider him. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, but he should get an invite to New York. That's the level of play he is at right now. 20 targets, 17 catches, 224 yards. 136 of those yards came after the catch. Had a touchdown, lined up at center, running back. You name it, he was there. He played one heck of a football game.
Yeah, and I'm even showing 151 yards after the catch. So even better, even more impressive. Catching the touchdown through a clear defensive pass interference that was never flagged. I mean, that was impressive. I mean, he's showing elite ball skills. He had that one-handed catch on the sideline earlier this season, goes through the back of the defender, plucks it over the defender's head, falls down, juggling the ball, corrals it in the end zone for the touchdown on the score. Perfect snap to Drew Aller on that. I mean, to Bo Prabula on that play as well. No, it was to Drew. I'm sorry. The back pass is Drew to Tyler. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So perfect pass to Bo. Drew throws the perfect 34-yard ball. Um, Tyler Warren lefty throw in there too early in the game. Um, the first drive felt a little forced. I don't know how you felt watching it. It seemed like every snap was like, how do we get Tyler Warren the ball? Like, how many creative ways can we get Tyler Warren the ball? And I think that led to some of the red zone struggles that Penn State had. Not being able to run the ball was important, but 3 times in the red zone, you had to settle for field goals. Does that get that done against Ohio State? I'm not sure, but yeah, Tyler Warren, hell of a game. Probably one of the best games a tight end has ever had in college football. And I don't want to speak in hyperbole, but I said earlier, ties the FBS record for receptions in a game by a tight end. 224 yards is video game numbers, and then obviously the touchdown. Got some time in at lead blocker. Had the double offset or the double wing shotgun formation too, showing the lead blocker on the jet sweeps and outside zones. So that was another interesting formation that we saw. So I mean, he played every position yesterday. I mean, it was where on the field is Tyler Warren, and the defense had to focus on it. Then he had that QB sneak, so he actually took the snap from under center. I don't know how you felt watching that play. I thought for sure, like I about pooped my pants when I saw Drew motioning to the sideline, and then I saw the offensive line move because I was focused in on Drew, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, this is gonna be like the snap is gonna go over his head. It's gonna be a 15-yard loss. Like this is gonna be awful, and I never saw Tyler Warren get under center. So a little bit of a heartache for me. It didn't fool the USC defense at all because I've seen the replay and they all just focus in on the ball. But my eyes, as the untrained fan watching, had a bit of a no shit moment there.
No, but if I'm correct, it worked out well for them. So I
It
mean,
did.
it worked out probably better than they could have expected. 4 yards is still a good chunk of yardage, and that's exactly what they needed in that moment. I thought James Franklin was very, very aggressive late in the game, with a lot of time left on that final touchdown drive. It was pretty nice. It was great to see. Going for it on fourth down, I thought was great. They convert twice with two excellent decisions to go to Julian Fleming, who caught two passes, and they were two of the most important passes of the game, which I thought was incredible. But for Penn State, obviously Drowler had a great game and Tyler Warren did his thing. But the story of the day is Ryan Barker. Ryan Barker is a walk-on kicker. Probably should have been the kicker from the beginning, but let's be real. Anytime you have a scholarship guy getting outworked by a walk-on, you want to give your scholarship guy all the tools in the world and all the opportunities in the world to prove he gets a scholarship, why they got the scholarship. But again, Ryan Barker comes in and does an incredible job. It's not an easy thing, and I loved his interview after the game when they talked to him. What were you thinking about? And he's like, I was, visualizing the celebration after the kick. To have that level of confidence, that level of swagger from a kicker that was untested, really, I thought was incredible. They didn't challenge him with two terribly long field goals. Obviously, first two, 34, 33. Second one was the third one was a 20-yarder, and then obviously the 36-yarder there at the end to win it. But man, hats off to him. Get that man a scholarship. And again, they played complementary football in all three phases outside of the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and just to touch on it again, Julian Fleming. This is why Penn State brought him in. They brought him in to be that dependable guy. And both of his receptions come on fourth down. 14 yards on 4th and 7, 17 yards on 4th and 10. Both are must-catch situations, and it kind of shows the confidence that Drew has in Julian to go to him twice on fourth down. Liam Clifford had an okay game. Trey Wallace had a really good game. I like what I saw. three catches on 6 targets. Probably could have done a little bit better. Had that one drop there, but um, it was good to see Penn State's offense being able to win a game that is not Penn State offense formula. Um, the offensive playbook felt a little long at times. Still hate going to Bo Prabula in the Prabula package on a third down. I think that's a second down package or a first down package. Let's not pull that in, especially because had a timeout to avoid a delay of game, and then also had the false start in the Prabula package twice, going ahead before calling the Prabula package late in the game on a very key third down. Thought that was a very questionable call. Might be time to abandon the Prabula package, especially on days where the run game is not working, because USC was stacking the box and said Drew Aller beat us. And the only way that Drew Aller can beat you is if he stays in the game and is at quarterback. So, yeah, he did. He did go and beat USC, but and then it felt like every time Penn State put 2 or 3 chunk plays together, 14, 15 yards, then another 15 yards, whatever it was, then they pop Bo in. Like the offense is finally getting rhythm. Why the hell are we taking it out of rhythm by throwing in another signal caller? And then Drew's in the slot and having to try to figure out where everyone is going to be on motion because Bo clearly doesn't know. The most loved person on the roster is the backup quarterback. I was not a fan of it yesterday and he did not have a good game. And if your backup quarterback's not having a good game and all you have for him is a special run package, you need to abandon it. It's disgusting at this point in time.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's going anywhere. As much as I would love that too. But at the beginning of the year, it didn't interrupt the flow. It wasn't bad. But you're going essentially 11-10 because anytime you trot Aller out there as a decoy, it's he's not live. That's not going to be a play. I think too many times they got a little too cute, but again, that window dressing sometimes helps. That window dressing led to Tyler Warren being the center and catching a touchdown pass from the center position because he wasn't covered up, being the end man on the line of scrimmage. So, it's a catch-22. Sometimes it works out really, really well in your favor, and sometimes it arguably doesn't. But the offense is clicking. Just keep doing their thing. I think Penn State is able to get a lead at any point in that game, other than the last moments of overtime. I think they do run the football a little bit more, but the game dictated Drew Aller beating him with the arm, and he didn't have his greatest day turnover wise. Clearly, the worst day of his career as far as that goes. But everything else, he did a great job, led the team in there, and again, they got out of USC with a W. And we all thought that was a toss-up game. It's a game that, Penn State wasn't favored by a lot. Again, USC is pretty good. Could have a one win for USC away from being a top 10 matchup. But now Penn State's 6-0. They got a bye week, and they host or they go to Wisconsin before hosting Ohio State in what is now Penn State ahead of Ohio State.
Oh, that's it has me shaking in my boots. I mean, legitimately, because the whole Franklin tenure has been Penn State's been the underdog to Ohio State. Penn State's probably going to be a 2 to 3 point favorite in that game because it's at home, and it's going to be expected that James Franklin wins. And we've seen in must-win games, with the exception of Saturday, that's been a struggle. One thing I do want Penn State to figure out in the bye week is what is their defensive identity. I don't get it. The man coverage struggled. USC started to go into a lot of screen passes, a lot of releases for the pass rush, a lot of misdirection and everything. Yeah, the 75-yard by Quentin Joyner, that was just an unfortunate play. But the rest of it is, even if you take that rush out of there, USC still averaged 5 yards a carry. yesterday. Like it's run defense was terrible. Pass defense might have been even worse. They were trying to play man coverage because Miller Moss could pick apart zone, but like you just got to go to an aggressive, like somewhat matchup zone defense because USC was finding success with misdirection. If you're finding success with misdirection and all of your defensive backs and half of your linebackers have their back to the ball, you're going to have these big open spaces. And we've not seen Penn State defense in man at all this season. And they decide to unveil it 6-hour flight from home. Again, a very critical game with a very prolific quarterback. Like I just the Tom Allen experience is not going well for me. Pass rush on PFF was rated at like 40 or 50 something, like just abysmal rating yesterday for the defense. Now, is that how we need to be ranking defenses through PFF? No, but like compared to the rest of the games, like this was by far their worst. Yeah, I mean, it started getting home late, but like USC notoriously has a terrible offensive line. I mean, they got one holding call against them all day. I think they probably had 3 or 4 really obvious ones. But I mean, it's just an abysmal defensive performance, poor coaching. The USC touchdown against AJ Harris. AJ Harris on the 2 or 3 yard line gives his receiver a free inside release. That's coaching. Why on the goal line do you give an inside release to a wide receiver? I don't care if he wants to run the slant. You play inside leverage and force the wide receiver outside, or that he's got to come through your chest. It's just that's just coaching to me. Like that is very poor coaching. Force the guy to come through you if he's going to come to the inside, because inside's what's open quick in the red zone. Inside's what's open quick on the goal line. Why are you giving up that? I don't know. Tom Allen experiment is, I am not loving it. It is. I'm no football coach, but like to me, that was just very questionable, and it's only getting worse.
I think the biggest thing, a lot of it is, Penn State doesn't, and then this is what's hurt them early in games before they kind of figure it out there more often than not in the second half, is that they just play outside of the defense. They play outside of the scheme, try to play some hero football. That's obvious. You can see that in the misdirection. With Joyner, gets the ball and just cuts back and goes. Obviously on the jet sweep, or the reverse, I guess I should say. And then there's another play that was supposed to be a design, I think, flea flicker, and somebody kept it and just went with it. And I think it was a big gain. But again, when you're playing man coverage, you're going to give up those intermediate gains and things like that, obviously, because your receivers are going downfield. But again, what's crazy is USC only rushed for 189 yards. Obviously, the Quentin Joyner run was 75 yards, first play of their game, right? So good for them. But Miller Moss was held to only 220 yards, which you would expect that to kind of be a little bit bigger, I thought. But 220 yards and 2 touchdowns isn't a bad day defensively. You still kept them at roughly 400 yards. But again, for Penn State, they bent, but they didn't entirely break. And that's kind of been the defensive mentality for a long, long time at Penn State. Obviously, this is way different than, say, Manny Diaz's defense. But you got to clean it up early in the game. The most important thing is, regardless of how bad of a day certain players may or may not have had, Penn State played their best defense when they needed to. That shows me that this defense is making play. That this defense is good.
It's
did they get home as much as what they could have done or should have done? No, probably not. But again, you have to respect the playmakers and Miller Moss and Woody Marks, who had a great game for USC. So you're not always going to be getting home on those because you're staying back and worried about what they do in coverage. But for me, the defense is doing okay. There's room for improvement, certainly. Obviously, they gave up 30 points, with 20 of that coming in the first half. But again, when it mattered the most, the defense balled out, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, 6 tackles for loss is great. They just need to improve on that 1 sack total. I think characteristic of the Manny Diaz defense was that they were getting home and the quarterback was uncomfortable, and it counted on the rest of the offense making plays because the quarterback was constantly under duress. I don't feel that the Tom Allen defense puts the quarterback under duress. The Quentin Joyner play, I mean, credit to the defense because the defense had it sniffed out perfectly, and it relied on Quentin Joyner making that quick decision to not throw the ball, which probably would have been picked or gone for a massive loss or a fumble. Any sort of bad scenario could have happened there. So credit to him, because if he doesn't make that, then that's a massive play. And then, this isn't a discussion if the offense converts. 3 field goals in the red zone. Can't be having that. Need to score. I mean, your red zone touchdown percentage needs to be 67 to 75%, and they were 25% yesterday or whatever they were. So, 3 field goals in the red stuff. A game where you only scored 4 touchdowns, or 3 touchdowns. So, yeah. So, the best case scenario, 50% in the red zone for touchdown percentage. You get 1 or 2 more touchdowns. This isn't even a discussion, but defense gets cleaned up. It's clearly capable. It just needs to be consistent.
Yeah, and they have a bye week to do it. And we're going to take one more break before we come back for the third and final segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jared. Kevin, obviously Penn State was not the only game of the weekend. There were a lot of games that went down to the wire. USC and Penn State was one of them. Oregon, Ohio State also was one of them. Texas and Oklahoma certainly was not. And then you also had Alabama, South Carolina that was way too close for comfort, and Tennessee and Florida that was also too close for comfort for the favored teams. So that the parity in college football is unmatched right now. And I think that's a testament to the portal, NIL. Those are the positives of it, because the result on the field is certainly paying off. You're getting some really good football games. There's a lot more parity than anything that I've seen in quite a few years. And with conference play now being the group of 4, or I guess the Power 4, or whatever you want to call it, there are better teams now playing better games late in the season. You're seeing OSU and Oregon battle it out in prime time in a game that comes down to the final seconds. You're seeing Texas and Oklahoma play in the SEC, and it's just a wild, wild time for college football, and it's resulting in some very, very exciting action on the field.
Yeah, in another game, Ole Miss LSU goes to OT.
Yes.
Tennessee was in OT against Florida at home at night. That's a tough game. Nico Iamaleava. I mean, he looked like a Heisman. He was a September Heisman candidate. 169 yards and a pick. Alabama, man, at home at noon, just a sleepy little game for them. South Carolina had a chance to win it, did not, but yeah, just nobody's taking care of business that they should be. 2 teams that are Iowa State and BYU. I think that's probably going to be your Big 12 title game. Both of those teams are undefeated, looking phenomenal for the Big 12. So Big 12 should have a good representative this year, which we haven't really been able to say much over the last few years. Texas, first year in the SEC, and I think Oklahoma was a little fake at the 18 spot. I've wanted to see a lot from is it Jackson Arnold for Oklahoma. I thought he had a lot of promise. The problem is that Oklahoma's, I think, top 4 wide receivers were hurt yesterday, which makes it tough on the offense. And then you run into an absolute buzzsaw that is Texas with Quinn Ewers returning. And Arch Manning kind of outdueled him stats-wise. Schedule is probably a little bit easier. during the Quinn Ewers injury. So Texas can even at this point handle a loss at quarterback and still be that number one team in the country, which I don't think Penn State can't say that. Oregon probably can't. Ohio State definitely can't. Like Texas, I think is my clear number one, and the parity across the rest of college football is. I said this earlier. I don't know who the number 2 through 5 teams in the country are. Like Georgia's still ahead of is Georgia ahead of Alabama, even though they lost the head to head. Alabama's look flaky. Miami's still sitting there at number 6 undefeated, but they're fake undefeated. I mean, they should have 2 losses on their docket. Clemson, LSU, like are they in the top 5 discussion? But I mean, Clemson has that ugly loss week 1, but it was week 1. So
right, and they've recovered rather nicely since.
Yeah, Boise State looks phenomenal still. Your guy,
yes,
Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Jeanty, baby. He had another big night, 217 yards and a touchdown. Another big run. They beat the Rainbow Warriors, I think is if they're. I'm not sure if they still call them that. It was a late game. I fell asleep during that one. But it doesn't get any easier for teams now across the country. Obviously, Penn State is just a few weeks away from their matchup against Ohio State. This week they have off. You've got Wisconsin at Camp Randall. That's not an easy place to play by any means. So that's, something to think about. Wisconsin could be entering that game, or I'm not sure where Wisconsin is this week coming up. They're at Northwestern, so they're probably going to be 5-2 coming into that one. But this week's slate of games are tough. You got Oregon at Purdue on Friday night. Obviously, Purdue is not good. They have that.
But Purdue took Illinois to the break yesterday. So
exactly. So there's so much that can happen. Miami is at Louisville. You've got Virginia, Clemson. Nebraska's at Indiana. Indiana is still 6-0. Army and Navy are both 6-0. And then you got the first 3 teams in the country that are top 3 teams in the country that are 3-0, and that's wild. Alabama is at Tennessee this week. That's a game I'm intrigued by. Michigan and Illinois, or Michigan's at Illinois. Notre Dame's at Georgia Tech, which isn't always an easy place to play. A&M is at Mississippi State. LSU is at Arkansas. Can Woo Pig Suey get some action there? And the SEC doing their nice little self-implosion here, not doing themselves any favors. It's Georgia and Texas. Like, this has some significant postseason implications. And then SMU is back in action against Stanford in an ACC game, which is wild to say.
That totally makes sense.
But I love it. And the reason why I love it, like, it doesn't make sense from a logistics standpoint, but, man, the product on the field has been incredible this year. That's 2 straight weeks of just some phenomenal football that has been purely chaotic at times, with teams winning games that they shouldn't. Looking at you, Vanderbilt, and teams losing games that they shouldn't. Looking at you, Alabama, Tennessee. That's what I love about it. Like, yeah, logistically, whatever. Like, USC went to Penn State, or Penn State went to USC, while Cal went to Pitt. Cal and USC should have played. Pitt and Penn State should have played. Yada, yada, yada. No, this is awesome for college football. This is what we want. This is some of the most exciting football that you can watch. For those of us that are NFL fans and still partake in that play, like, especially for me as a Dallas Cowboys fan, like, yeah, obviously Saturday is my only time to enjoy football. Absolutely miserable. But it just creates such a cool thing, because it's creating untraditional matchups, untraditional upsets, and it's just completely chaotic. Like, I'm not sure that there will be a team that's going to be undefeated this year.
I don't think so. It's just awesome. But we talked about a good on-field product. Let's talk about a good product off the field, and that's Good Dog Beverage Company. Good Dog offers a variety of products, including zero carb, zero sugar vodka cocktails, and bourbon hard seltzers. Also, whiskey cocktails that only have 3 grams of carbs and 3 grams of sugar. Through Good Dog's leverage the beverage program, they donate a portion of the profits from every case sold and 100% of the merchandise sales profits for service dogs for people in need. You can go to gooddogbeverage.com. That's good, D-O-G-G beverage.com to find merchandise and the closest retailer carrying good dog beverages to you. Yeah, college football has been awesome this year. The best part about college football to me, and this is going to be my parting shot, so we don't even have to go to it because I'm just going to go to it right now because it had me so fired up today. College football is accessible. I mean, sure, you have to have like cable for ESPN, and maybe you have to have an ESPN Plus subscription, which is $10 a month. But it's available with the basic sports package. If you want to watch any game that you want, college football says no problem. You want to watch Alabama? Sure. There's actually 2 broadcasts for Alabama because we're going to put the Sicko Stat broadcast on SEC Network, and you can watch the Sicko Stat broadcast, or you can watch the traditional broadcast. You know what you can't do? You know what league doesn't do that? The NFL. It is awful. This is my parting shot. Pittsburgh plays the Raiders. Marquee matchup. 4 o'clock CBS game. Should that be a national game, Jared? Shouldn't people outside of the Pittsburgh or the Las Vegas and Oakland markets be able to watch that game? No. The NFL says, no, you must leverage your freaking second mortgage to be able to watch that stupid game. And it's awful. The NFL, I cannot wait for them to lose their antitrust lawsuit because this is just bogus. This is the second time that Pittsburgh's had a prime time, or not prime time, 4 o'clock window game, and I had to watch the freaking CBS rodeo. And at least the first time the rodeo was live, today was rodeo season highlights. It's NFL time. And what were they airing in Pittsburgh and Oakland and Las Vegas? The Pittsburgh game. But if you live in Richmond, Virginia, fat chance of being able to watch that. Here's some rodeo highlights. Come on. Do better. That's why college football is awesome. I can't. The more I get invested in college football, the less I like the NFL. It's just awful.
Well, I think the thing too.
The access to the product is abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, they make it so hard. Why was your game blacked out? Because of it wasn't because of the Commanders because they played early.
No, that's what I'm saying. There was no NFL game on CBS at 4 o'clock today. The second time this season that Pittsburgh's played a West Coast-ish game, Mountain or West Coast time zone game at 4 o'clock, and I've not been able to watch the game. Or because CBS didn't have a. It's just stupid. Like
I'm fortunate, or I guess maybe it's unfortunate that I get to see a lot of Cowboys games because they're a national brand, much like the Steelers, much like the Raiders. But yeah, like you can watch college football any day of the week now, really, starting on Tuesdays, and with some action. But also, like you get a good game. Like this week, you get Friday night, you get Oregon at Purdue.
And guess what? You can watch it on cable. It's there. Right. It's accessible.
Saturday, you get games starting at noon, and then the last game starts 11 o'clock. Like it, obviously there are 100 plus teams that have to play compared to 32, or not even 32 on a given week now at this point in the season because of bye weeks. But yeah, I mean the accessibility to college football is what makes it great. It for me, like idiots that like Boise State or like other teams, like you like Arizona or whatever, like you can watch those obscure teams across the country that you don't normally get to see. Like it's not just a Penn State, it's not just a team that's a national brand, a blue blood, if you will. And I think that's the coolest part about it. But the beauty of college football. I really don't want them to change anything at this point in time. We've gone through enough changes. Like we haven't seen the college football playoffs like play out yet. But man, right now, I love where college football is at as far as the product is concerned, and that's awesome.
Yeah, this season has been awesome. We catastrophized what is NIL going to do to college football. How is all this conference realignment going to play out? And turns out the people who are driving the dollar bills kind of got it right this year. We'll see how it goes going forward, but I think everybody needs to sit back and enjoy the product that is college football this year, because I really can't remember a season where there's this much turmoil, this few undefeated teams who actually have a chance. And now, like, you don't even have to be undefeated, but teams are clearly trying, and everybody feels that they have a chance to be in that top 12. We said that it wouldn't make this regular season matter, but it seems like teams who are in that like 12 to 25 range are fighting tooth and nail to win those games, to win tough games, win games against the top 3, top 5. Because if they do put that statement win, they think that they can be number 12. And it's been awesome. This is it's so fun. Saturdays are so fun right now.
That's right. But the good news is for us, get to chill on this Saturday.
My blood pressure.
I'm very much looking forward to a weekend off.
Yeah. Me too.
Because then it's boom, 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 boom forever. Well, I mean, for me, I get a week off weekend of the 9th when Penn State plays the whiteout. So obviously that's going to be a little bit different for me. But college football is still going to be featured that weekend. But yeah, now it's off for the bye week. And Penn State again is bowl eligible. College football hopes are well alive. And really, biggest game they have right now, regular season wise, because the Big Ten championship is in play still, is at Ohio State is against Ohio State in 3 weeks. That game, obviously, right now is a 3-4 matchup. That could change, given maybe what happens this week. But right now, you get a top 4 matchup in Beaver Stadium. Right now, Kevin, we record this on Sunday. This is October 13th. So that game time won't be announced for another
week and a half. Probably
week and a half to 2 weeks. Obviously, because of the bye week. So we're going to get the Wisconsin time this week. Next Monday, we're probably going to get the Ohio State time. What are your predictions before we go?
I certainly hope it's not Big Noon. That's my only hope. Like that, I would love for that to be a primetime game. Primetime NBC. Yeah, I would love for it to be that, but something tells me, I haven't looked at the schedule for 11-2, but something tells me Fox is going to ruin our hopes and dreams for that one.
Now, I know that on that day, and here are the other games that day, because I think that it's important to note who else plays on November 2nd. My beloved Boise State plays Friday, so that's not a concern. Oregon and Michigan. I'm hoping that ends up Big Noon. Solely because the gravity of the 3-4 matchup playing at noon takes all the pomp and circumstance out of it. That game should be 3:30, 4 o'clock, or 7:30, 8 o'clock. That's how that should be. Do I like primetime games professionally? No. Personally, they're okay. They make me stay up past my bedtime. But from a Big Ten standpoint, for me, that game against Ohio State, especially if it stays a 3-4 matchup, should Penn State win in Wisconsin, needs to be under the lights.
You also have Indiana, Michigan State, which could be has Indiana been on Big Noon this year? Michigan State certainly hasn't. Yeah, there's a couple of good candidates. Wisconsin, Iowa could be a good game for the old traditional Big Ten West there. Yeah, I just hope Fox doesn't ruin it for us. So we'll see. It's 3:30 CBS would be ideal. There's a party at my house at noon on that day, so really hoping it's not noon, or else I would be miserable. I would be trying to do 2 things at once, and it's not going to go well for me.
St. Francis, the other college team that I cover, is playing at 1 on that day, so I desperately need it to be a 7:30 game.
Yeah,
to make my life a little bit easier. But I'm not feeling confident in the noon kick. Or I'm not feeling confident it's anything but a noon kick. But again, for what this game means in the playoff, in the Big Ten, and everything, this game needs to be 3:30 or later.
There needs to be a rule where if it's a top 10 matchup, it cannot occur at noon. Like that needs to be in every clause. Like we need to see those games. They need to not be in the noon window when you've got Virginia Tech Marshall playing or Virginia Tech Boston College. Like
it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle it. And I don't have much faith in the powers that be.
Nope. We know I hate Fox, so.
Yes, that much is for sure. And what's also for certain is that we've come to the conclusion of the podcast. For Kevin, quickly, this has been Jared Prugar on the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. We'll talk to you again next week.